He could have just left, right? He had nothing to learn. All you have to do is just live, and you're learning by like completing your goals of like just here, like pure life, I guess. Like you're basically already doing the goal of life, so just keep on doing it, you know. Whoa, welcome, everybody. Welcome in. So today is another day that I'm doing an installment of my Alan Watts discussion breakdowns. Um, last week, we did Seen Through the Net, right? That was part one that we did. It was the fifth installment. That was last week. And let's see, some of the topics that we went over. Western culture is the result of bidding. And humans are always trying to build straight things. The universe is just very wiggly, never conforming to straight ideas or anything particularly like. The universe is more fluid than what humans want it to be. We always talked about. I mean, every single one of them. I feel like we talk about Purusha and Prakriti. Those are really huge in like anything that we're thinking about. And everybody knows that a thing or an event, but nobody knows what it is. We define like sometimes we say that's a thing, right? And then like we know like, oh yeah, it's something, right? Obviously it's a thing, but we don't know what like a thing is because it's like a unit of measurement of thought, right? It's a measurement of thought, just like an inch is a measurement of distance, right? So you can say it's a thing, an event, or a person, or everybody knows what a person is, kinda, right? But like you don't know what like that person is, right? Everything's different. So that's kind of what he talked about last week, and then that was part one. So we're kind of gonna tie it in, I'm assuming, in part two this week. So yeah, let's get jumping into part two of the Seen Through the Net by Alan Watts.
The Western model of the universe is political, and engineering or architectural. And therefore, as one understands the operations of a machine by analysis of its parts, by separating them into their original bits, we have bitted the cosmos and see everything going on in terms of bits of information, and have found that this is extremely fruitful in enabling us to control what's happening.
Is this
After all,
this is what he was saying last time, right?
Is the result.
Did we listen to that already?
Well, now,
No.
processes of nature by the good life.
Okay, well, where did he say that? Okay, I remember I have that written down.
Your mind. The notion that this may be the prejudice of a certain personality. Notation of words, self-involved. In terms, say, of Newtonian mechanics, and later in terms of what we call uninfluenced. The very constitution of logic, which are going into, say, computers.
Oh yeah, this is.
The Westerns are very languid. The Western model of the universe is political and engineering. To think of the world in terms of a machine, bits of information is 1, 2, 3.
Okay, wait, hold on. All right, I'm sorry. I'm trying to jump between these because maybe they just spliced that and it just went on a little bit longer than what it was supposed to. Let's see.
Small bladder. And not a pattern. Figures.
No. I'm sorry. Okay, so we're gonna restart.
The Western model of the universe is political and engineering or architectural. And therefore, as one understands the operations of a machine by analysis of its parts, by separating them into their original bits, we have bitted the cosmos and see everything going on in terms of bits of information, and have found that this is extremely fruitful in enabling us to control what's happening. After all, the whole of Western technology is the result of bitting. And so we thing the world, that is to say, in order to measure a curve, you have to reduce it to point instants and apply the calculus. So in exactly the same way, in order to discuss or talk about the universe, you have to reduce it to things. But each thing or think is, as it were, one grasp of that spotlight, going jerk, 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 like this, you see. So we reduce the infinite wiggliness of the world to grasps or bits. We're getting back to biting, you see, the idea of the teeth. To grasps of thought. And so we thereby describe the world in terms of things, just as that fisherman could describe his view by the number of net hole through which the view was showing. But the problem that arises is this. First of all, very obviously, everybody knows, I hardly need to mention it. Go to the science of medicine. You get a specialist who really understands the function of the gallbladder. And he's studied gallbladders ad infinitum, and he really thinks he knows all about it. But whenever he looks at a human being, he sees him in terms of gallbladder. And so if he operates on the gallbladder, he may do so very knowledgeably about that particular area of the organism, but he does not foresee the unpredictable effects of this operation.
It's like just
in other
spotlighted.
Connected areas, because the human being's gallbladder is not a thing in the same way as a spark plug in a car can be extracted and a new one replaced. Because the system isn't the same.
You can't replace your gallbladders? You just take it out? I know you can replace kidneys and shit, though. So that's interesting. Interesting comparison that he makes. That's kind of like, I feel like that's kind of like not really the smartest comparison. Because you're like trying to, well, I mean, I guess he's not trying to prove a point. That's the whole thing. He's just discussing it. Huh.
There is a fundamental difference between a mechanism and an organism, which can be described operationally. Mechanism is assembled. You add this bit to that bit to that bit to that bit. But an organism grows. That is to say, when you watch in a microscope a solution in which crystals are forming, you don't see this thing of little bits coming in, joining each other, and finally making up a shape. You
That's
see
right.
a solution
Yeah, that's true.
where, well, it's like when you watch a photographic plate developing. But suddenly, the whole area which you're watching seems to organize itself, to develop, to make sense. Moving from the relatively simple and gooey to the relatively structured and prickly. But not by addition. So then, if we are trying to control and understand the world through conscious attention, which is a scanning system, which takes in everything bit, what we're going to run into is that if that's the only method we rely on, everything is going to appear increasingly too complicated to manage.
I absolutely love that. I really do. I'm just going to change this really quick. Awesome. Yeah, I honestly love that. That's, you have to, if you just see everything in like little bits, it's never going to like, you can't focus on the little things because the little things aren't going to add up. You're never going to see the whole picture unless you're focusing on the whole picture, which is hard to focus on the whole picture because you're too focused on all the little things. So I think one of the best things that you would say that you could do is to meditate, right? To not focus on all the little things so that you're able to try to just relax, and eventually you'll just see the bigger picture, which is really interesting. It's really interesting how that works.
So that you get, for example, let's take the problem of the electronic industry. The catalogues of products that are being produced over the world by the electronic industry. Who has read all the catalogues? How do you know where you've got something you're working on, whether it's patented or not? Who else has taken out a patent? Has anybody had time to read all the catalogues? Well, nobody has. They're just voluminous. And it's exactly the same in almost any other field. There's an information explosion like a population explosion. How on earth are you going to scan all that information?
It's not possible. You can't scan all the information in the world, right?
Yes, of course you can get computers to help you in this direction. But by Parkinson's law, this...
Anybody know Parkinson's law? I don't know what that is. What is Parkinson's law? Parkinson's law is an old adage. I don't know if that's a word. I don't know how to say it. Adage. That work is the old adage that work expands to fill the time allotted. Work expands to fill the time available for its completion. So, okay, interesting. So, let me just see if I can. Nope. All right, so check this out. Work expands to fill the time available for its completion. That's really interesting. I've never heard of this concept. But obviously, as you get an idea, like I would assume this is how it works. So as your time goes, your effort becomes really, really, really high. And you're like, okay, so you're going to like drive your effort just like through the roof to try to get this done. And then you're like, okay, now I've seen what I've completed, and I really don't need to complete that much anymore in the like the whole like scheme of things or something like that, I guess. So then you start taking less and less. You have to put less in that. Oh, interesting. Hold on. Okay. What does this one say? Time available 2 hours. Time available 3 hours. Yeah. So you stretch it out, and then by the end you're not really doing anything, but you're like, yeah, time allocated. Interesting. You stretch it out. This is why like at jobs that this is like one of actually the most interesting things that like I had read recently or talked about recently was just the fact that like jobs at 8-hour-a-day jobs, like these people are like working like really, really hard maybe to get all this stuff done at home, and then they can like fuck off for like a while, like 6 hours, 5 hours, and they're still getting paid. But like when they go back into the office and stuff like that, then they're like more like watched. So then now they have to like stretch their job a lot longer, where they like will be bullshitting through the job, but it's like very, very interesting because it's like psychologically not good for you, because basically what like I was reading or like listening, I can't remember where I was, like I just like had basically had this information like given to me, but it was basically how like it's hurting your your psyche, because you're not really doing anything, and by that you're not actually working towards your goals like as much, because you can, I don't know, it's just like the way that it works on your psyche or something like that. So really, really interesting. I never heard of this Parkinson's law, so that's cool.
Sooner you become more efficient in doing this, the more the thing is going to develop, so that you will have to have more efficient computers still to assimilate all the information. You'll be ahead, but only for a short time. So you see, there's this problem of the sort of competition of consciousness, of its how fast can you go, duty, 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 and keep track of it, you see? And say, I've got a good memory, I can keep track of that. And you say to you, I bet you can't. I'll go more complicated than you. See, musicians do this, drummers, you know, and they get things going, and they start, and so long as they count, and lots of musicians do count, it is crazy, but they do, and they count, and they outcomplicate each other to the point where you can't retain it any longer in memory. So you say, okay.
Damn. So they're like, so DJs and drummers are like fucking probably super good at memory. Like, you know, the memory game, like the gold and, or the yellow, blue, gold, or yellow, blue, red, you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
If I can't retain it, we've got this gadget here that can. And we've got these marvelous mechanical memories, and they will retain it. And they'll go much more fancy. They'll go this duty, duty, duty at a colossal speed, like that, you see. But it's the same old problem. Because you get something that can outdo that.
I'm really interested in where he's going with this, because he's basically saying there's always one-upmanship when it comes to mechanics. I guess you can always outdo it, and because you can outdo yourself in mechanics, that drives Western culture to think that we can always one-up ourselves and do better for ourselves. So it drives our psyche to, it's just like the culture that we're born into. I don't know. I think that's where he's going to go with it. That's interesting.
So we end up asking, yeah, but supposing there were some other way of understanding things. Let's go back from the spotlight to the floodlight, to the extraordinary capacity of the human nervous system to comprehend situations instantaneously.
So he just skipped over exactly what I think I was, like, what I was on the path of. Like, I think he just skipped that part. He's going to try to explain the Eastern culture side of it, which I think that's what he's going to do now. Now, if I'm understanding it correctly, he's basically saying, since we're so focused on, okay, well, time out. I don't know what he's going to go into, but yeah, interesting. He kind of skipped that.
Analysis. That is to say, without verbal or numerical symbolism of the situation in order to understand it. I hope you understand what I mean by that. It's clear. Floodlight.
Sorry, I skipped back.
To the extraordinary capacity of the human nervous system.
Yeah, that's what I can't remember what he was talking about, like, but I was just going to think about that. Like, have you guys ever, so, like, I mean, it goes back to, like, what I was saying, like, or whatever, what I've maybe said in streams before, or, like, in my videos and stuff, but it just reminds me of, like, when I see things, like, when I see, like, situations coming, like, you ever just, like, get that feeling, you're like, oh, wow, this is really bad, or, like, whoa, this is, you know, it's like, you get that nervous feeling, or, like, it's anxiety, or, you know what I mean, or, and you know it's, like, not right, or, like, you, like, know something actually is coming up. It's kind of weird, because, like, I feel as though, like, it's, like, I've definitely, like, felt it in, like, gambling and stuff like that. Like, I'll tell the story right now. There was I think it was last year in February. I was on a cruise right before Corona, and so fucking nuts. So like we're on a cruise, and like I give my dad like $50 and we're gambling, right? And I end up like giving myself, like, I mean, I had money, but like I gave him $50 to gamble, and he's winning and losing, and like we're playing roulette. I give him $50 to gamble, and I think I sit down with the other 50, and I eventually pulled out more, but he's winning and losing and coming up and down. He never actually lost his whole 50, right? I'm gonna preface this by saying that I'm more or less down probably about, I'd say, $1,500, $1,500 to $1,800 at this point. Maybe just 15. I don't know. It wasn't that bad because so I tell my dad, I'm like, I'm down to like $17 or something like that, and he's down to like 13 or something like that. Maybe it was the other way around. I'm like, hey, just pick a number. Let's just, like end it. Like, we've been here for like 45 minutes. Let's just, let's go. And he's just like, all right, pick one number. And I'm like, yeah, just one number, Dad. Like, just let's do it. You know what I mean? Like, come on, let's just like. And at this point, I'm already like kind of upset because I've already lost a little bit more, and you know what I mean. But like, he's like black 20. I'm like, all right, fuck it, we're riding black 20. Let's put $30 on black 20, right? You know what I mean? And it's just like. Fucking spin that shit, fucking send it, and fucking black 20 fucking hits, yo. Like, I don't know how, but like, you know what I mean? You're watching it roll in there, and it's just like absolutely meant to be in black 20 at that fucking time. Like, he already knew that. Eventually, I figured out that he already knew that, and I like knew that like eventually, as it was spinning, I'm like, wow, this is really about to fucking hit like that. Wow. But it's just like that feeling. How do you fucking pick that number? I mean, some just say it's luck, right? And I obviously say that it is luck. I mean, in a way, but like you still feel it. If you've never done that before, like, fuck, dude, don't do it. Don't do it because it's addicting.
To comprehend situations instantaneously, without analysis. That is to say, without verbal or numerical symbolism of the situation in order to understand it. I hope you understand what I mean by that. It's clear. We do that. We have this curious ability of pattern recognition, which the mechanical systems have only in a very primitive way. Xerox have put out a machine which recognizes figures written in almost anyone's handwriting, provided their handwriting is fair.
So actually, that's pretty crazy because this is, really older now, but like he's basically saying that like, computers could only understand, or mechanics can only understand certain patterns, but like now, dude, they make up the fucking patterns. Like they're like, oh, X and Y smile minus the eyebrows and giving him the bleach blonde hair, you could match with. Oh, you like blondes? No, you get brunettes. You like big asses? No, you don't get those. Fuck, man. I'm like, what the fuck? The computers make that shit up now? Like, why the fuck do they get to make up the patterns? That's fucked up. But it's true. Like, that's like old. This is like old thinking. You know what I mean? The new computers are like, that's what's kind of scary about it too. Like, low key is like, computers are super advanced at this point. They're really like, like I said, they're making up the fucking patterns. Like, I don't know how the fucking algorithms work to make me fucking match with fucking Kayla. You know what I mean? I don't even remember swiping on fucking Kayla. Kayla, if you ever like, because I do have this in my my Tinder profile. I don't know if there's actually a Kayla that I matched with. Oh wait, Kayla, yeah, I did, yeah, duh. I'm such an asshole right now. Yeah, Kayla, yeah. So fucking, you know what I mean? I'm being directed towards you, literally. That's funny. Ha.
Grade school and normal. But a computer has a terrible time trying to recognize the letter A when it's printed in, say, sans serif, Gothic, longhand, or whatever kind of A you may write. The human recognizes instantly this pattern, but the computer is still at a disadvantage here. It seems to lack a kind of capacity I would call field organization, because it's all punctive, it's digital. It is like a newspaper photograph, you know.
I think this is still very, very, outdated in that sense.
Which, when you look at it under a microscope, is all dots. Now, so the problem is this. In developing technology, are we leaving out of consideration our strongest suit, which is the brain itself?
I don't know. That's such a hard question right now. I think humans are finding ways to fit other parts of the brain that aren't so technical, I guess would be the word, into computers. The fact that you can creatively draw on computers just like that, and obviously design and everything, that's pretty crazy. I mean, like, we figured out ways that we can, I mean, obviously a computer is just a tool. So, like, I think if you're leaving the tool up, if you're not using your brain and just having the tool just work itself, then yes, you're going to miss some points, obviously. But for the majority, I mean, I don't know. I think it might just even be diminishing returns at this point. Like, computers are just getting really fucking smart. Like, computers can write plays, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. That's a weird one. It's like different age now, for sure.
See, we are at a situation where the brain is still not really worked out by even the most competent neurologists. It puzzles them. They can't give a model of the brain in numerical or verbal language. Now, you are that, you see. You are this thing. You yourself are this thing which you yourself can't figure out. In the same way that I cannot touch the tip of this finger with the tip of this finger. I can't bite my own teeth. But I, who is attempting to touch the tip of this finger with this finger, am, by the sheer complexity of my structure, far more evolved than any system which I can imagine. This is, in a way, slightly akin to the Gödel theorem, that you can't have a system of, say, a logic which defines its own axioms. The axioms of any given system must always be defined in terms of a higher system. All right, so you are the most complex thing that has yet been encountered in the cosmos. And you can't figure you out.
So who does? So who figures you out then? I don't know. If you can't figure you out, who does? The watcher. You do, right? You have to figure. I think that's what I mean. I don't know.
Now, suppose we're going to try to do that and become, as it were, completely transparent to ourselves so that we entirely understand the organization and the mechanics of our own brains. What happens when we do that? Well, you're back in the situation of God. When you're God, what are you going to do? When you're God, you know what you're going to do? You're going to say to yourself, man, get lost. Because what you'll want is a surprise. And when you've figured everything out, there won't be any surprises. You'll be completely bored.
Right. And so your ego's like, yeah, go away. There's nothing to be learned. It's like I listened to, I think it was Devin Nash's last talk on his stream, where he was just talking about like Zen Buddhism, and like about how there's this guy, the highest Zen Buddhist monk or whatever that was at the temple, right? And like then the student comes, and the student comes to learn from the Buddhist monk, and he's like, yeah, like, oh, Zen master, like, teach me. And the Zen master's like, yeah, I have nothing to teach you, get lost. And he's like, nah, like, really, like, I'm really here to learn. And he's like, nah, get lost, dude. Like, I have nothing to teach you. Like, to be honest, like, I'm honestly, like, I'm gonna look you dead in the eyes. Like, look, dude, I have nothing to teach you. And the students all like, yo, this is a test. This is a fucking test. This guy is not telling me the truth. He's like, yo, Zen master, I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay because I know this is a test. And he's like, yo, this isn't a test, man. I don't have anything to teach you. I have nothing to teach you. And he's like, nah, this is a test. Like, look at all these people that are here meditating with you. And the guy's like, yeah, I told them all to get lost. They're all decided to stay. And the student's like, yeah, because you're lying. Like, brother, like, obviously they wouldn't stay for no reason. And and so the guy sits down, right? He's like, I'm gonna stay. And the student sits down. He's like, I'm gonna stay, and this is like where I'm gonna fucking meditate, and I'm gonna learn. And eventually the Zen master dies, and eventually the student like ends up, I can't remember how it goes exactly, but the student ends up getting it, right? Like, he ends up like finally like living out like his time at the temple, and by the end he's like, dude, I understand that the Zen master was right. Like, that was it. Like, he already knew. Like, I figured it out now. Like, I did it. I did what I was supposed to do. I figured it out. You should definitely just fucking live life. Like, I figured out that like I wasted time. That's basically kind of, I think, how it more or less goes. So it's like, because he, I mean, not wasted time, obviously, but like, he could have just left, right? He had nothing to learn. All you have to do is just live, and you're learning by like completing your goals of like just here, like pure life, I guess. Like, you're basically already doing the goal of life. So just keep on doing it, you know? Like up here. Right here. Let's see. It says you are exactly where you need to be. And yeah, I mean, that just like I'm nowhere that I don't need to be. Like, you know what I mean? I'm exactly where I need to be at every single moment. I'm not worried. Ever. Like, if you let fear rule yourself, like, that's not good. So, I mean, obviously, like, everybody has fears. I don't know. There's like a point where I want to jump off like things and like ride roller coasters, and I can't. It's hard for me to do it, but can't let those fears define you. You know what I mean?
But on the other hand, a person, I would say, who is really functioning completely is basically a person who trusts his own brains and permits his brain to operate at a more optimal level. In other words, he knows how to think things out, but he makes his best discoveries without thinking. In other words, you all know very well the processes of creative invention. You've got a problem, you think it over, and you can't find out any answer to it because the digital system of thinking is too simple, too clumsy to deal with it. It's more complex. There are more variables than can be kept in mind at one time.
Some would say too many variables, and thinking about all those variables would just hinder your progress. And so, by that fact, by not doing anything and thinking too much, sometimes you're just, not completing anything. You're never actually moving because you're just trying to think too much about what's your next step instead of just actually doing a step. Sometimes, obviously risk management is, huge, but sometimes the first step is way more, I would say, the first step of anything, obviously, is way more progress than, you know what I mean? Taking steps is progress, and that's all you have to do, because then you're making progress. If you never left 35 to go to 36, then you may never learn how to get to 37, right? Because it's like once you've been to that part of that level, then you know that there's something next, right? You'd have to try to get to that next part.
So you say, I'll sleep on it. Or you go to the Institute of Advanced Studies at Princeton, Behavioral Sciences at Stanford, where they pay you to goof off, which is highly excellent idea. And you moon around, and you've got a blackboard, and you look out of the window and pick your nose, and so on. And your brain eventually hands you the solution to the problem. And you immediately, because you have technical knowledge, you recognize that's a solution. But then, naturally, you go back and check it. And you work the bit-by-bit form of thinking on it and see, now, does it come out in those terms? And if it does, everybody will agree with you, yes, that's the answer. But if it doesn't come out in those terms, they won't agree with you, because you haven't subjected it to the socially acceptable, traditional form of analyzing knowledge. But here's the problem. It takes an awful long time to check these things out. It takes an awful long time to arrive at the solution which you got like that by a purely calculative process. And most of the situations of life are such that they don't wait for us to make up our minds.
It's an interesting co-side topic to that is there's a book that I'm reading right now, or the book that I'm listening to right now is called Big Magic, and it talks about how ideas are floating around. Basically, I don't know if it's the ether, or they're basically living organisms, right? Ideas are actually they have Purusha, they have life, or it's one of two, Purusha or Prakriti. I think it's Purusha. They have life, right? And so she's talking about how I don't want to ruin the book actually, but it's basically how an idea it's just waiting for whenever you have an idea, right? It's already maybe been in other people's heads, and nobody's just given it the full attention awareness that it needs. Just some people, where everybody needs attention, everybody wants attention, just like an idea does. It's the same concept. So when you give it to the full awareness, then it becomes the idea. Then it's yours for that time being. And that's not to say that it can leave you at any point as well. But that's how ideas are existing, I guess is the word, being.
So that an enormous amount of carefully worked out scientific knowledge is trivial. It's all very well, very finely worked out, but much too late. Because life comes at you from all sides, all over, everywhere at once. And the only thing you've got to deal with that is the thing inside here, in the skull. Now, I'm not saying this to put down all this marvelous work of calculation, brought to immense sophistication electronically and so on. Not at all, because actually you people are the first people to understand the limitations of your own kind of knowledge. And you're going to have to tell the politicians about this. They don't understand. They think that this kind of knowledge is the answer to everything. And I think most of you know it isn't. Which is not something, I repeat, against technology. It's only saying that when you walk, you put your right foot forward. And that's fine, but then you must put your left foot forward. So let's say that the great technological enterprise has been putting the right foot forward. But you must bring up the left foot.
So in the book that I'm reading right now, the actual book that I'm reading right now, it's called Yoga and the Quest for the True Self. Actually, the part that I just got over was about the pillars that we have to balance ourselves through. It's like like the way I envisioned it was like it'd be like two pillars, like like this, and then the ever elastic like figure 8 that we're drawing, like to like draw our pillars like is like together basically, and it's like equanimity and that's not false self. Equanimity and something else. The twin pillars of the reality project. Yeah, the common abiding self, and where the fuck is the first pillar? The clear seeing. Yeah. Okay, it's just okay. So yeah, awareness is building up awareness, and then equanimity. It's like if you build up too much awareness, like so fast, you could have like a fucking like a mental like breakdown basically, like because you just know too much. And you're just like, whoa, like why do I know so much? Like, I don't know, I imagine like going through like, I don't know, maybe like as a kid, like your parents dying or something like that. That could probably like send you, I mean, maybe it's not because like, maybe you'd have to be like 13 or something like that and your parents die or something. I don't know. But like, just like learning too much about like why you are the way you are too fast without like having like love for yourself already. But having too much love for yourself and not having risk to like want to like learn about yourself more, I guess. I don't know. Let's see. Clear seeing, so like awareness is like clear seeing, mind, wisdom, no self, seeing through the self. And then equanimity is like calm abiding, heart, compassion, the self, building up the self-soothing. The seer and the mother basically are the two. Interesting. Building up the self and then seeing through the self. It's like, wow, you're doing fucking great. And then you're like, I see through you. You're doing great. To who? To yourself? Cool. You're doing great. Just keep doing. I see through it. You're doing great, but I see through it. Interesting.
That is to say, bring up revaluation and new respect for the organic type of organization, which is incomprehensible to technological thinking, but which always underlies it. That by itself doesn't work, because after you bring the left foot up, you've again got to bring up the right foot. The analytic. After goo comes prickles. After prickles comes goo. And you have to keep this thing up. And I think our danger at the present time is that we are so heady.
Interesting, because like I said, I envisioned it with like the like the figure 8 with infinity, but like really it could be like pistons or right or left or good and bad. I mean, like without having one side you can't have the other.
So delighted with the results of Trickles that we've got to let back a little bit of goo into the system. Well, now, what we've got to try and do is, I think, to work out a way of making the brain itself more efficient. And this is the thing that civilized education has neglected. Lynn White, to quote him again, used to say out a way of making the brain itself more efficient. And this is the thing that civilized education has neglected.
Making the brain more efficient or organized? I don't know.
Lynn White, to quote him again, used to say that the academic world today only values three kinds of intelligence: verbal intelligence, mnemonic intelligence, in other words, good at remembering, and computational intelligence. He said it entirely neglects kinesthetic intelligence, social intelligence, and he had at least 7 kinds of intelligence, I think.
What do you think? Do you think that in today's day of age that we actually neglect those intelligence, or do you think that like maybe 50, 60 years from now, or 50 to 60 years from when this was given or so, we've evolved and now we're more aware of all the other insights that people do have and like intelligences that we as people have.
Get what they all were. But it is this extraordinary capacity of the neural organization, say, to engage in pattern recognition and in solving instantly certain complex problems without knowing how it does it. The trouble is, when you do something you don't know how to do, you've got a non-repeatable experiment, in a certain sense. In other words, you can't explain to someone else how to put it together. But you can do it like you can open and close your hand without any knowledge of physiology. Do it every time. Whoops, I don't know how I do it. I just do it, you see.
It's interesting.
So we have an enormous potential of intelligence, of knowing how to do all sorts of things, which, to the extent that we are academically minded people, we won't allow ourselves to do, because we can't explain it. You know, for example, there's a way of cooling a brazing furnace. It's very simple. But engineers say it's theoretically impossible. It can't happen. It's like bees can't fly by the laws of aerodynamics, but they do. So the rather practical issue I come to is this, that technology, if it relies exclusively on linear thinking, is going to destroy the environment. It's going to become too complicated to handle. Man is going to be like the dinosaur, which had to have a brain in its head and a brain in its rump because it was so big. You know, the caveman kept a dinosaur, and when he went to bed at night, he'd clump it on the tail with a club, and it'd scream at 8 o'clock in the morning. Wake him up. And it seems to me we're getting into that kind of saurian situation with our technology, which is going to lead us to extinction.
Because we're putting our brain in the technology? Is that what he's saying? Like, basically, we're basically putting our brain into this, and so then we're not having, like, actual Like we're splitting it, so we have to have this. Maybe. To feel something? Maybe.
So the question is, are we going to foul things up by insisting on using linear input information and controlling it as the dominant tool of controlling the world? Or can we master all that as we have done and still use the linear input and analysis, but with a fundamental trust in our power to assimilate multiple input, although we really don't know how we do it? And my point is that you can't find an absolute which you can pin down, you see. So there always remains in any human operation the basic central thing, which you can't pin down because it's you, just as the teeth can't bite themselves. Now, the assumption of Judeo-Christian culture is that man in his nature is sinful and therefore can't be trusted. The assumption of at least ancient Chinese culture is that man in his essential nature is good and therefore has to be trusted. Because they say to us, if you can't trust your own basic nature, you can't really rely on the idea that you're untrustworthy. Therefore, you're hopelessly fouled up.
Wait, what? He said if you can't rely... If you can't rely on... Yeah. I mean, if you can't trust yourself, then how could you even trust yourself?
So, this has amazing political and other consequences, this different assumption. If we say, no, we human beings are fallible and basically selfish and really, really fundamentally evil, and therefore we need law and order. We need a control system to put us in order. We thereby project these control systems into the church or into the police or into somebody who are really ourselves disguised. See, it's like daylight saving time. Everybody could simply get up an hour earlier. But instead of doing that, we alter the clock, because the clock is a kind of authority. And we say, well, the clock says it's time for you to get up. And the Amerindians laugh at the palefaces because they say, paleface, he doesn't know when he's hungry until he looks at his watch.
So weird. Such a trip. Doesn't know when he's hungry until he looks at his watch. Yeah, people just eat just like it's 8 o'clock. Time to eat. It's like normally by the time I'm like eating, I'm like, fuck, man, I'm hungry. Like I need to eat. Like by the time I'm eating, like that's when it is, and like I feel like that's a lot. Like maybe it's not. I don't know. Maybe it's not. You know what I mean? But I feel like it's a lot better for me. A lot better for me. I'll say that.
And so in this way, we become clock dominated. And the abstract system takes over from the physical, organic situation. And this is my big pitch, if I'm going to make a big pitch, is that we've run into a cultural situation where we've confused the symbol with the physical reality, the money with the wealth, and the menu with the dinner. And we're starving on eating menu.
Starving on eating menu because everything looks so good. That's interesting. I just want to hear that one more time and then write it down.
Is that we've run into a cultural situation where we've confused the symbol with the physical reality, the money with the wealth, and the menu with the dinner. And we're starving on eating menu.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Oh man, that's good. I like that one. I like that. Just a summation. A summation. I think they don't know if that's how you say it or not. I liked how it all summed up. Anyway, let's run through what my notes are. Oh, the Western model of the universe is political and engineering. I've kind of already started to learn that, and I kind of discuss it a lot now, as much more. Just like I'm trying to learn a lot more Eastern culture based stuff to kind of get, because especially I think it was like the last one. I don't remember. It was one of the last few of them. It was he was talking about how do you know about your culture? How do you even know what your culture is without looking at other cultures? And it's kind of interesting too, because if you can know what your culture is to a degree, but not ever unless you're studying a different culture and learning how they would learn. I don't think you could ever understand to obviously it's interesting. It's kind of like how when you learn English and Spanish, or when you learn the two languages as one, it's growing up, it's kind of almost the same, right? But you're still flipping your brain, but when you try to learn it later, your brain is already defined in English. So trying to define another side of your brain with Spanish is a lot harder than as you're learning and you're coming up. You know what I mean? Because it's this is no longer a phone. It's un telefono. You know what I mean? You have to know. It's not you have to recognize it as un telefono, not a phone. And then how do you say that in Spanish? Una computadora or whatever, right? How do you know what that is unless you're trying to translate it? And if you try to translate it, it takes too long. So that's just the idea behind it, at least. Anyway, so yeah, Western model of the universe. We reduce the infinite universe to the grasp of thought so that we are able to discuss and describe. So there's a lot of things that are indescribable, and when we try to discuss them, we just reduce them to what we can discuss them as, and sometimes that's just feelings and thoughts and whatever. But sometimes you come up with this idea and you're like, yo, I don't even know. I think that was when we were down here too. Mechanism, the differences. Differences. Mechanisms and organisms. They're assembled and the organisms grow. So you're always adding more in mechanisms, and then organisms are developing more. They're multiplying basically. And obviously mechanisms are mechanical, and organisms they're alive. But want to see the bigger picture, not the smaller pieces. That's pretty good thing to think about. We always want to try to see as much as we can, spotlight it out instead of floodlight it out instead of spotlighted it out. Parkinson's law, that was probably the coolest thing that I had learned, or I just learned that there was a name for it. Interesting that I was just talking about that I don't know, not a week ago I was just talking about that, and now I know that it's a law, which is really crazy. More time to do things equals less effort as time goes on, but you'll still complete it in the same amount of time. So that was super interesting that I learned that there was a law for that. And then we learned about the Gödel theory. You can have a system that defines. You can't have a system that defines its own axioms, I think is how you pronounce it. I don't know if that's I don't know if that's actually facts or not, or what. Oh, there it is. That's the word.
Axiom.
Axiom of state, or proposition which is regarded to be established, accepted, or self evidently true. That's what a plural is. What is an example of an axiom? 2 plus 2 equals 4. 3 times 3 equals... Wait. In geometry, we can have a simple statement. Similar statement that a line can extend to infinity. That is an axiom because you do not need proof to state its truth, as it's evident in itself. All right. Can't have a system that defines its own. Yeah. Okay. We might have to do a little bit of diving into like what axioms are, but I think from what I understand, it's basically you just can't have like a system that's like defining itself. So like as much as we try to define what the brain is, like it's still the brain, and like you can't even like we put a word for it, like it's not even like it's scoffing at the fact that we put a word for it. You know what I mean? You're like, ha. Well, maybe not the brain, but like the being. You know what I mean? Maybe, I don't know. That one's hurting my head right now, to be honest. Ha. Oh, let's see. A person that's functioning, completely trust his full brain, knows how to think, but does the best without thinking. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just about like, it's just about those like weird instances that you have that feeling when you want your brain to fully think all the time, but like the things that matter are just gonna come with intuition and feeling. So let them be. We confuse the symbol with the physical reality, money with wealth, and menu with dinner. We are starving on eating menu. Confuse the symbol with physical reality. Money with wealth, and menu with dinner. We're not seeing the full thing. We're just spotlighting too much. And by spotlighting and looking at it for too long, we're not actually eating. We're not actually consuming what we want, what we need, right? So we're starving. Interesting. Very interesting. Oh, man. That one was a good one. I really like that one. I got to save these notes real quick. Alrighty, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Alan Watts, Seeing Through the Net, Part 2. I do this every week, or it's about an every weekly thing. Probably Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. One of the three. Probably Wednesdays. I'm still kind of, not iffy, but like I do it on my days off. So Wednesdays. Anyway, I'm live on Twitch. You can come find me live on Twitch. Link in the description below. Find me live on Twitch. You can talk, communicate, and join in on these conversations that I'm breaking down Alan Watts talks. So that was number 6 out of 12 in this first of 5 that I have. So lots of weeks to go. I'm live on Twitch a lot. Come hang out with me. Again, thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you liked any part of the video. Leave me a comment what you thought. And don't forget to subscribe. So we'll see you in the next video.